Really? No, did you tell her you're getting old?
We all thought he was like 25 years old.
Yeah.
Oh, did you see Raymond Obisi back in town?
You're looking good.
Oh, really?
Yes, he's on my LinkedIn, and I see he's back in town.
Oh, he's not on my LinkedIn. So I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know.
Yeah, I got
Well,
some-
maybe he didn't like it.
So this counter is really, it's just an insurance policy that, because I found a little loophole just looking at it. So what happens if, you know, your pay study does get approved, which is 90% or whatever, 99% sure that it will. Are we going to have people that fall through the cracks that don't get the 4% because there's nothing in there saying that they would? And so with this little tag on there, which is nothing more than a repeated language below in item 2, I think we can,
Yeah, we probably, to be honest with you, I would have to go back in and check every single person then to make sure, because I can't guarantee that. Because again, the formula, so let me give you a for instance of where it could be less than 4%.
that's not maxed out or close to being maxed out.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
I'll give you a for instance. Let me think about it. So, because there is and I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I can't agree to that, but I can't agree to it right now because obviously I need to look at every single person. It's possible that there are no Teamsters getting less than 4, in which case, okay, fine. But the reality is, I can't say that, and so, and
So
for instance.
you're willing to assure us that in item 2 that.
No, see, in item 2, it's in the old previous pay ranges. It means the study wasn't approved, and
Well,
it's in the new ranges.
I understand that.
So in the new ranges, I don't know that everybody's within 4% of the top of the range, because the top of the range is going way up. So,
Well, okay, does it need to say in their current, or in their range as of, I see what
No.
you're saying. I don't have a problem with,
no employee shall receive less than a 4% increase unless they are within 4% of the top of their current pay range.
that's what I'm saying. Because I
Possibly.
hear your issue. That's what I meant. I meant current. I
think-
understand people are moving.
Yeah, I think I could probably agree to that, but I'd want to look at it, and if there's a scenario that doesn't, okay, and I'm
Because
just thinking
again,
of.
you are offering that in item 2, in the current pay range. And I'm
Yeah.
not trying to pull a fast one and say of their new pay range, that's not.
Right, and that's, I think that I could probably do that. I'm just trying to think of a scenario, and okay, so I don't think the scenario exists, and so just let me say that. But in the event that it did exist, let's say that we had an employee that was hired into the county January 1st of 2019 as a manager, okay? And so they've only been here less than 1 year. And then for whatever reason, they didn't work out, or they were hired in as a special equipment operator, something higher than, and then that special equipment operator, and I can think of one person that actually might be in the scenario, because he came in as an operator, he didn't work out as an operator, so he demoted to utility worker 1. So now he went all the way down, he went down, but he didn't go down to the base of utility worker 1. Because
Around 10%.
he
Or
might have gone,
5%.
right, exactly. And so if he was brought in as a plant operator, and then he got demoted to a utility worker 1, which I think happened, then he's still way above the base of utility worker 1. But when I run a formula, it's gonna say that he should be at 77% of the midpoint, which would be the minimum, okay? Well, he might be more than 10 or 15% above where my formula says he should be, and anybody more than 10 or 15% above might have got 3% or 2%. They didn't get the full 4%. I don't know if there's anybody in that situation. There may not be, and I'm not trying to play any games with you.
I mean, maybe I'm missing something.
So he would
but-
be within 4%, he would be less than 4% above the base of the range, so in his instance, he would get about 3% or 2%, he wouldn't get the 4. But that's an anomaly, it's really literally a one-off. So I would feel better saying that no employee shall receive less than 4% unless they are within 4% of their current range, unless otherwise approved. Because there's, in other words, I'm gonna be able to bring that scenario to you and say, look, John, this is why I can't do that. I mean, it's gonna be so obvious to
Tell me
you.
again why that scenario you just spelled out, why the guy who was demoted.
All right,
and
so-
he's-
So he would have been brought in, say he was brought in, all right, look, again,
Are
the
we
utility
talking-
worker 1, I'm
Are we-
making this up.
Okay,
Utility worker 1 starts at $12 an hour, okay? And goes to, whatever, it doesn't matter. A heavy equipment operator starts out at, I'm gonna make this up, but say it starts out at $17 an hour. Or, for argument's sake, this guy was brought in at $17 an hour. So he's been with the county for literally now 6 months, okay? He's brought in. He flunked his 6-month eval June 1st, right? So he's brought in
All right,
January
stop right
1st.
there, we're gonna save you some time.
Okay.
only apply to probationary or less than?
No,
1 year?
because what's gonna happen in his instance is he gets off probation, he didn't make it in probation.
Well, some,
But but the department says to me, well, but he's a good kid, we don't wanna fire him, can we just demote him to the utility
okay,
worker
but my
one?
question is, would a quick fix be for employees who have been here for at least 1 year?
Probably.
Because if that's your only anomaly in this.
I think it might be, I'm just trying to think of scenarios which, I could run a report and probably tell you by next week if there's even anybody in that.
That sounds like Kevin. Are we talking about Kevin?
No, he would, well, yeah, he's another one that would apply to him. It may, but you know what? But I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that it affects him, because I don't
Yeah.
know that it does. I could go back right now to the spreadsheet and take a peek and say, okay, was he already at 4%? But he might
Yeah.
not be, he might be at 3. So, and quite frankly, there could be people who sat for 30 years in their grade. Now, in those instances, you're right, they should be at the top of their range right now, so they're within 4%. And so even though they wouldn't be within 4% of their new range, because they've sat in grade for 30 years or 25 years, if I raise the top of the grade 15%, then the good thing is they're not maxed out, but they're still not getting more
Well,
than 2 or
chances are
3%.
that pay study is going to give them whatever.
There's more room.
The 6 or 7% raise that you're saying. that-
No, because if they're near the top, we only ever go off the midpoint. Nobody have more than,
Okay.
the formula ends at 10 years of service, because after
Right.
10 years of service, you're supposed to promote. You're not supposed to live in the same position for 30 years, it's just not the way pay is designed. But I'll run it, I mean, let me look at it, because I don't wanna say no for the sake of saying no, when the reality is, we may not have anybody in that instance, but
I
I'm
could just hear
not.
people going ballistic when they vote on this thing, and they have in their mind that there's a minimum threshold of 4%.
Well, there's not really a minimum of 4. I would say 3. I would say I could safely say 3.
Well,
And
learning
be,
numbers are, I like
all right,
4.
I'll, yeah,
And so,
I mean,
seriously though, I mean,
I'll run
if it's the 1 year, if it's a 1 year thing, that.
I'll run it, I'll take a look at it.
Because I get that, somebody coming here, they've been here for 6 months, and they've been demoted within that time, and I would expect to get 4% raise.
Right, and that's, I gotta run it, I'll pull out if there's anybody, I don't know off the top of my head if there's anybody, but I will absolutely run numbers and tell you, and if I can agree to it, I will. If I can't, then maybe I'll do a counter.
Better than we can,
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, okay.
That's
Yes.
study right there that you have, is that just the positions that you're changing the names of?
No,
No, those are called
Those are
benchmarks, because those are positions that no matter what county I go to, they're probably exactly the same.
Because my department's not even on
Right.
there.
Yeah, it's not, all that does is that generates a formula to pretty much tell us as an average where we're at as a county.
So then, what are you going to, actually, that's what she wants to know, what are you going to do with their department or their classification?
the benchmarks the benchmarks are the entire organization. They set the stage for the whole organization in relation to where they are now. So we know where a 911 operator is compared to an animal control officer. We know where a 911 operator is compared to a code enforcement officer. We use benchmarks to do the whole organization. But the reason benchmarks are used is because, and I'll give you a good for instance, right? If I go to Hillsborough County, I know what I'm looking at if I want to look at my position. It's HR director, because I am everywhere I go, right? Bus driver is probably the most difficult for us to comp. Why? Because it's not public sector. Most of the bus drivers are HART, PSAT, MEAT. It's not MEAT, it's MCAT. But when you look at the sign, it looks like it says MEAT.
Yeah.
So they're all private. I can't get that data. But I know where a bus driver should be paid when I look at the school board. And we did do some, we actually did some looks, and they're not necessarily on that, because for certain positions like bus drivers and fleet guys, we actually went and looked at Pasco County School Board. We looked at other areas that we didn't comp for all positions. So, but we really did do a really good market look. But the benchmarks, exactly what John was just saying, the benchmarks give us benchmarks. Every other position in the organization, everyone is looked at off of those benchmarks. Sometimes in relation to where they currently exist. Sometimes we look at it, like 911, we pinged the market 3 years ago and made sure we got us up, and we were higher than even Pinellas County was. And so we look at 911 operators, but sometimes we don't have to, we do a whole benchmark, and then if we're still curious about other positions, like a bus driver, we may have to go look at Pasco County, but it would not be something we would add. We would just ping it to make sure we're on the right track. And so 911 is one we just ping to make sure we're not, because it's one that 911 operators just like building inspectors right now, they really react to the market. So in other words, if all of a sudden we're down, you know, or some other agency is down a ton of positions, they may jack the rate
Did
on.
you hear that too?
Instantly.
I thought I was going crazy.
It's upstairs, they're doing their 11:30 trotting around the office.
Zumba?
Yoga.
Sort of like that.
What is
It's,
it now, one
it's
time
called
we
the
came in here?
5-minute.
I think they
It's
were
the-
doing, yeah.
It's
It's the
exercise classes.
5-minute workout. They do their 5-minute workout at 11:30.
What the hell are they doing?
And they use weights, so they drop them.
Oh, okay.
So, all right. But anyway, but every position was looked at in this.
All right, well, as soon as you respond to us, and keep in mind, you're offering everybody getting a 4% of the current thing in item 2, and so if you're prepared to do it there,
Well, I'm really not prepared to do it there. I just don't think the study's not gonna go through.
then just know.
So, well,
I hope it
that's
does, I
true.
really do, because, you know, I just, you know, the fact that you talk to all of the commissioners.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is that you have to understand that I also costed this thing out already. I'm not allowed to exceed a certain number, and that's 6. So if bumping up people that are currently only supposed to get 3 to 4 messes up my numbers, I can't do that because it's not within the budget. 4 is within the budget because 6 is. But if bumping people up that are at higher salaries to 4% instead of 3% affects the bottom line at 6, then I can't do it. And so, because like I said, my commitment to Dan Biles is that I did this pay study, gave him a number, and the study will be within that budget. So I cannot affect the budget.
Well, identify what anomalies there are.
I will, I'll look at it.
And then, again, if you can do that, then we can get a commitment from this committee to ratify it, and then we gotta figure out how we're gonna ratify it. You know, you don't have do you have any more of those benefit fair things like we used last
Next
time?
week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Have a ratification on Wednesday night. We'll talk about that when we get
They
there.
do it on
The
Thursday.
sooner you can do this, the better.
We want to run a table at the fair. How much?
No,
What do you mean,
it's
no?
already filled, sorry. No, we don't rent tables.
Not to us,
Yeah, nah, yeah.
only certain people.
What, Ed, shut that thing off for a minute.
All right.
What's going on with our